Before we begin, imagine this. You're chained to a cold alien wall, about to be executed in front of an entire army. But just as the blade rises, your dire wolf, the one creature who's never betrayed you, snaps his chains to rescue you. If you want more stories where humanity's loyalty and power eclipse entire galaxies, like this video right now, comment your favorite apex predator below, and subscribe so you never miss an upload. Darius Kale awoke to the taste of blood in his mouth and the scent of iron and stale alien air burning his nose. His head lolled forward, neck muscles failing him as pain pulsed from his shoulders down his spine. Metal cuffs bound his wrists above him, biting into torn skin. Each breath rattled in his chest, dry and heavy, the recycled oxygen of the alien warship leaving his tongue cracked. Somewhere beyond his cell, he heard humming engines and the distant echo of guttural voices. They spoke in the alien tongue of the Jarek, a clicking, vibrating language that reminded him of shifting glaciers under moonlight. His eyes opened to slitted yellow lights embedded along the ceiling, illuminating a barren steel chamber lined with cells, each encased by translucent energy barriers pulsing with a faint emerald glow. In the cell opposite him, a massive shadow shifted. Golden eyes gleamed from the darkness, unblinking, locked onto him with an intensity that reached into his marrow. Fenra. The dire wolf lay chained at all four limbs, his broad chest pressed against the cold floor, claws splayed, fur matted with dirt and streaks of dried blood. Even with chains taut against his muscles, his presence filled the room like an oncoming avalanche. Black and silver fur rippled as he shifted his weight, testing the shackles binding his massive paws. He did not whimper. He did not growl. He simply stared at Darius with absolute focus, as if to remind him, "You are not alone." Darius swallowed, copper tang filling his mouth again. Memories flickered behind his half-lidded eyes, white-fanged puppy jaws chewing his boots during Arctic training rotations, running across frozen tundras beneath green auroras. Fenra curled beside him during endless polar nights when temperatures could kill a man in an hour. He had raised Fenra from puphood on the genetic labs of Fort Resolute, ignoring base protocols that labeled apex war beasts as mere military assets. To him, Fenra had always been more than weapon or tool. He was loyalty incarnate. Footsteps approached. Darius's eyes flicked sideways as three towering insectoid forms entered, carapaces dark as obsidian veined with bronze. Their mandibles clacked in irritation as they stepped before his cell, pupilless eyes assessing him like a dying specimen. One of them, adorned in black enameled armor and a deep maroon sash, spoke first. His voice was smooth yet gnarled, dripping contempt with every syllable. "So this is humanity's special operative," the alien drawled, his translator necklace warping the Jarek tongue into Terran standard with static undertones. "Pathetic. Bleeding. Chained like prey ready for flaying." Darius shifted his head just enough to glare at him, his left eye swollen shut from the last interrogation. The alien stepped closer to the barrier, mandibles twitching as he leaned down, casting a skeletal shadow over Darius's bruised form. "Commander Vralek," another general began, tone deferential, "the troops await the execution. They believe watching the Terran's head roll will harden their resolve against the Deathworlders." Vralek chittered softly, a sound Darius had come to associate with smug amusement. "Yes. Bring him to the execution hall at first cycle. Let him watch his own death approach under the ceremonial blade." He paused, glancing toward Fenrir's cell. The dire wolf lifted his head higher, ears pinned back, silent growl vibrating through his chest. "And the beast?" asked the third general, tilting his head as black compound eyes shimmered under the lights. Vralek gestured dismissively. "Chain him tighter. Perhaps we will pit him against the trainees later. He is no more than a savage creature, regardless of human delusions about loyalty." Fenrir's golden eyes remained locked on Vralek as the general turned away. The alien flinched minutely, uneasy under that unblinking gaze. Darius saw it, and despite the pain splitting his skull, he allowed a flicker of a smile to touch his split lips. Even in chains, Fenrir commanded respect, the kind no human words could earn. The generals left without another word, boots thudding against the steel walkway until their sounds dissolved into the low rumble of the engines. Silence returned, thick and heavy. Darius breathed out slowly, shifting his wrists against the cuffs until blood oozed down his arms. Each movement set his nerves alight, but he forced himself to remain conscious. He would not die slumped like some broken prisoner. His gaze slid back to Fenrir, whose breathing was calm and deep, muscles coiled beneath fur that shimmered like dark steel under the cell lights. "Good boy," Darius rasped, voice nearly gone. Fenrir's ears twitched forward at the sound, eyes softening minutely before hardening again as his massive paws tested the chains pinning him. A quiet metallic groan rose from his shackles, just enough for Darius to hear. His pulse quickened, his chest hitching with a ragged half-laugh that turned into a cough. The dire wolf was planning something. Time passed in silent defiance. Fenra's eyes flicked between the entrance and his master, calculating distances and scent trails. His nostrils flared as he inhaled the odor of alien metals, blood, ozone residue from plasma rifles, sweat of insectoid guards, faint scent of electrical circuits under the floors. He shifted slightly, jaws opening to reveal thick ivory fangs capped with titanium alloys. He bit down on his front shackles and tested them with a slow, deliberate torque. Sparks flickered where tooth met alien metal. Darius closed his eyes for a moment, letting the hum of Fenra's breath fill his ears. The sound soothed him more than morphine ever had. He remembered when Fenra was no larger than his forearm, nuzzling under his parka for warmth on polar recon missions. He remembered the first time Fenra hunted an Arctic bear, returning to him with blood-drenched fangs and proud golden eyes. Loyalty forged not from genetic programming but choice. Chains rattled beyond his closed eyelids. The guards were coming. 3 armored Jarek stomped into the prison block. Their mandibles clicked impatiently as they deactivated his cell barrier. The energy flickered, vanishing with a low hiss. One grabbed Darius by his hair, yanking his face up to the glow panels. His vision swam with vertigo and pain. "Wake, Terran," the guard snarled, breath reeking of acidic pheromones. "Time to face your glorious end." They unshackled his wrists from the overhead hook and cuffed them behind his back. His arms trembled from blood loss and torn ligaments, shoulders screaming in agony as they hauled him upright. His legs barely supported him. One guard shoved a rifle muzzle into his ribs, forcing him forward with short, vicious prods. As they passed Fenra's cell, the dire wolf lunged forward, chains clanging violently against the energy barrier. The guards laughed, one flicking his electro-prod through the barrier's crack to jab Fenra's nose. The dire wolf froze, golden eyes locking onto the guard's face. His lips curled back in a silent snarl that showed every inch of his reinforced fangs. The guard flinched back instinctively despite the barrier, nearly stumbling over his own clawed feet. "Useless beast," he spat before continuing. Darius kept his gaze locked with Fenra's as they dragged him away. His mouth moved soundlessly. "Wait." Fenra lowered his head, growl fading, and lay his muzzle against the cold floor, eyes never leaving his master. His breathing slowed to a predator's rhythm. In that moment, Darius felt a flicker of hope bloom in his chest. Small, fragile, but alive. They passed out of the cell block into wide steel corridors illuminated by pale emerald glow panels. Darius's feet dragged across ridged metal floors, his boots leaving faint trails of blood with each step. The guards marched in silence, focused on their duty, unaware of the slow, relentless calculation ticking behind golden predator eyes. Behind them, Fenra waited in silence. Chains strained against his movements as he slowly shifted his weight forward, pressing muscle and bone against the steel links. His jaws parted again, teeth sliding around the weakest segment. He ignored the electric pulses shocking his gums, ignored the pain vibrating up his skull. All he felt was the memory of his master's touch, the quiet voice that once said, "If I fall, you rise." The hum of alien engines vibrated through the deck plates. The guards turned down a narrow hall toward the execution chamber, unaware of the quiet, metallic groan rising in Fenra's cell. Outside, the burnt-out moon drifted through space, casting its pale broken light across the viewport windows, illuminating the massive alien warship like an ancient predator in orbit over its kill. Darius felt the air grow colder as they approached the chamber. He could hear chanting in Jarek tongue beyond the tall black doors, ceremonial death songs welcoming his end. He did not bow his head. He would face death the same way he faced life, with unyielding gaze, silent and ready. Behind him, unseen by any guard, Fenra's chains splintered with a quiet, triumphant snap. Fenra paused as the final link split with a muffled metallic crack. He froze, ears pivoting to scan the corridor outside his cell. No alarms triggered. No energy barriers flickered in warning. The chains slid off his forepaws in a coiled heap, leaving raw red lines against the dark silver fur of his legs. He licked them once, tasting iron and ozone residue from the electroshocks burned into his flesh. His breath fogged in the chilled recycled air as he lowered himself onto his belly, muscles rippling under his massive shoulders. He sniffed the air again. The scents were clearer without the shackles confining his posture. Blood. Human blood. His master's blood. Sweat from 3 Jarek guards ahead. Ion discharge from plasma rifles. The sweet, coppery tang of ceremonial oils used for executions. His golden eyes narrowed. Slowly he pressed his snout against the energy barrier. It hissed and sparked under the thick fur on his nose, sending electric shocks pulsing across his skull. He did not flinch. Instead, he traced the scent trails flowing under the energy shield's base, memorizing them. His nostrils flared. A flicker of cool, unfiltered air whispered against his whiskers from a ventilation duct hidden behind the cell's rear wall. His ears swiveled toward it. He turned, massive paws silent against steel, and approached the wall, jaws opening to clamp around the grated panel. Muscles coiled and bunched in his neck as he wrenched sideways. The thin bolts snapped, metal shrieking in protest before falling away into the darkness beyond. Fenra nosed the grate aside and slithered his massive frame into the duct, shoulders scraping both walls, fur flattening against ribbed steel. Each movement was measured, silent despite his weight. He crawled forward until his senses told him he had bypassed the energy barrier entirely. Another grate blocked his exit into the main walkway, but the metal was weaker here. His jaws clamped down. This time he pulled with focused violence, ripping it free in a single wrench. It fell soundlessly onto the empty corridor. He emerged with the silent fluidity of a shadow. For a moment he paused to orient himself. The corridors twisted through the warship in alien geometry, turning at angles that defied Terran engineering. But Fenra did not need straight lines. He needed scent trails. He lowered his head to the grated floor and inhaled. Master. His hackles rose as adrenaline flooded his body, sharpening every nerve ending to a knife's edge. The scent trail led left, down a narrow hall lit only by flickering emergency lights. Somewhere ahead, he heard muffled chanting, an echo of guttural alien syllables rolling against cold walls. He moved like a hunting storm, claws finding traction in ridged steel, each step silent despite his size. A guard appeared from an adjoining corridor. The Jarek's mandibles clicked in alarm as golden eyes met his. Fenra lunged before a scream could form, jaws clamping over the insectoid's entire armored neck. His teeth sheared through chitin plating as if it were dried bark. The guard convulsed, thorax cracking under the pressure, and went limp. Fenra released him without a sound. The corpse slid down the wall, mandibles twitching in dying reflex. He continued forward. Another corner turned. Another scent trail verified. Each step brought him closer to the gathering of Jarek voices vibrating through the floor plates. The corridor widened into an archway framed with black bone carvings depicting triumphant alien hunts. Beyond it, the execution hall glowed emerald and bronze under ceremonial light globes hanging from cables. Alien soldiers lined both walls, 2 rows deep, chittering their death chants in perfect unison. In the center knelt Darius Kale, hands bound behind him, head lowered. His hair fell across his bruised face in sweat-plastered strands. Blood dripped from his split knuckles onto the engraved steel floor. Before him stood the executioner, armored in black ceremonial plates adorned with white sigils. It raised a massive blade forged from alien alloys, its edge shimmering with green plasma filaments humming in deadly harmony. Fenra crouched at the threshold, observing. He counted soldiers with a predator's precision. 12 in formation along the walls. 3 ceremonial drummers at the rear. 2 generals near the throne dais. The executioner. And Vralek, perched atop the central throne carved from obsidian bone, mandibles spread wide in cruel amusement. Fenra's eyes locked onto Darius. His master's breathing was shallow, chest rising and falling in weak rhythm. But he was alive. Alive and not yet broken. A deep vibration rumbled in Fenra's chest, an ancient growl so low it merged with the mechanical hum of the warship itself. His tail flicked once, a silent punctuation of decision. Then he surged forward. The 2 nearest soldiers registered movement but never processed the blur of dark silver and black fur crashing into them. Fenra's jaws clamped around the first soldier's throat, crushing chitin and spine in a single bite. He twisted, flinging the corpse into the second guard, sending both sprawling against the ceremonial pillars. Plasma rifles clattered to the floor. Screams erupted as the soldiers turned their weapons toward the charging beast. Fenra zigzagged between the pillars with impossible speed for his size. Plasma bolts scorched past his flanks, searing fur and skin, but he did not falter. He launched onto a guard firing from the left flank, jaws clamping down on its head. Mandibles shattered. Brain fluid sprayed across the pillar as Fenra tossed the body aside and lunged for the next. In the chaos, Darius raised his head. His good eye widened as he beheld the silhouette of his dire wolf tearing through armored soldiers like paper. For a moment, every pain in his body vanished. Hope flared in his chest, bright and savage. "Fenra," he rasped, voice torn from dehydration. The dire wolf pivoted at the sound, golden eyes locking onto his master's with raw relief. Blood dripped from his fangs as his gaze flicked to the executioner raising its blade in panic. With an earth-shaking snarl, Fenra lunged, jaws wide. The executioner swung downward. Fenra collided with his chest mid-strike, knocking the blade from his claws. They fell together. Fenra's teeth sank into the alien's throat, ripping through chitin and muscle. The executioner convulsed once before going limp. Fenra dropped him and turned to Darius. The ropes binding Darius's wrists were reinforced alien fiber, resistant to Terran blades. Fenra lowered his massive head and clamped his teeth around the cords. His jaws flexed with precise force, careful not to graze his master's skin. The ropes snapped. Darius's hands fell free, blood surging back into his numb fingers and agonizing tingles. He reached out, burying a trembling hand into Fenra's thick neck fur, gripping tight as if anchoring himself to reality. Behind them, the remaining soldiers regrouped, rifles raised. Vralek rose from his throne, mandibles clacking in fury. His voice boomed through the chamber. "Kill them both. Bring me their corpses for the victory banners." Fenra snarled, placing his massive body between Darius and the soldiers. His golden eyes blazed with primal fury as plasma bolts flew toward them. Darius rolled to the executioner's corpse, grabbing the fallen plasma blade. His vision blurred with pain, but he forced himself upright, staggering beside Fenra. The dire wolf glanced back at him briefly, ears flicking forward in silent understanding. Together they faced the firing line, one broken human and one apex predator forged in loyalty beyond genetic programming. "Ready, boy?" Darius murmured, tightening his grip on the humming blade. Fenra's lips peeled back from his titanium-capped fangs, chest vibrating with a thunderous growl. They charged as one into the hail of plasma and alien screams. The first plasma bolt seared past Darius's face, close enough to burn the sweat off his cheek. He ducked behind a fallen pillar, dragging Fenra with him as shots melted the carved obsidian bone into bubbling slag. His chest heaved with ragged breaths. Every joint screamed with torn tendons and bruised ligaments, but he forced his fingers to tighten around the plasma blade's grip. Its energy filament hummed low and dangerous, vibrating up his wrist to settle in his bones. Fenra crouched beside him, hackles raised, ears pinned flat against his massive skull. His golden eyes tracked every movement among the soldiers regrouping near the throne dais. Each flick of their mandibles, each shift of clawed feet against steel, burned itself into Fenra's focus. His lips peeled back to reveal titanium-reinforced fangs dripping with the blood of the executioner. Darius swallowed against the dryness in his throat. "They're reorganizing firing positions," he whispered, words barely audible above the low whine of charging plasma rifles. "If they form a full arc, they'll cut us down before we reach the exit." Fenra shifted, tail twitching once. His body vibrated with a silent growl that pulsed against Darius's chest like a second heartbeat. The dire wolf lifted his snout, sniffing the scorched air. His ears twitched to the left, where one soldier broke formation to flank around the fallen pillars. Without a sound, Fenra lunged. His paws struck the steel floor in 3 silent beats before his jaws clamped around the alien's leg. The Jarek screamed as Fenra yanked backward with brutal force, snapping chitin and bone in one motion. The guard collapsed, dropping his plasma rifle, claws scraping across the deck. Fenra twisted his head and slammed the guard's skull against the floor, silencing him instantly. Plasma bolts scorched past Fenra's shoulders as he leapt back behind the pillar beside Darius. The human grabbed the fallen rifle, flipping it in his hands to check its charge level. "Half capacity. Enough." "Good boy," he rasped. Fenra huffed, eyes flicking toward the throne dais where Commander Vralek loomed behind his soldiers, mandibles twitching with calculated rage. "Fall back and regroup." Vralek roared, his translator collar warping the alien command into Terran standard laced with static. "Trap them in the chamber and vent the atmosphere." Soldiers began to retreat toward the execution hall's rear doors, rifles raised to lay down suppressing fire. Darius saw their plan instantly. Once the doors sealed, they would open the chamber to the void, leaving him and Fenra frozen husks floating in alien space. "Not happening," he muttered. He rose from behind the pillar, plasma rifle raised, and fired in quick succession. 2 bolts struck the nearest soldier square in the chest, melting through chitin armor to expose smoldering organs. The alien collapsed, limbs twitching. Fenra charged beside him, moving in a blur of muscle and black-silver fur. He launched onto another guard, jaws clamping down on the alien's weapon arm. Fangs pierced through flesh and armored plating alike. The rifle clattered to the floor as Fenra's momentum carried them both into the pillar, cracking bone against stone with a dull crunch. Darius advanced, firing in controlled bursts. Each plasma bolt punched clean holes through armor and bone, sending Jurek warriors crashing to the floor in sizzling heaps. His arms trembled from strain, each recoil vibrating through damaged muscles, but he forced himself to keep moving. To stop was to die. One soldier lunged from the right, mandibles spread wide in a battle cry. Darius pivoted, slicing upward with the plasma blade. The weapon hummed as its energy filament carved through the alien's torso in a clean diagonal arc. Chitin split open, spraying acidic blood across Darius's chest and arms. The stench burned his nostrils, but he ignored it, shoving the corpse aside. Fenra tore through the left flank, jaws snapping through limbs and throats with surgical precision. His eyes burned with primal fury, but his movements remained disciplined, a predator forged not only in nature but in training. He pivoted to shield Darius's blind side, ears flicking back to register his master's breathing and position at all times. They advanced together, leaving a trail of mangled bodies across the execution hall floor. The last soldier turned to flee toward the rear exit, but Fenra lunged before he took a second step. His jaws closed around the alien's waist, crushing chitin plating and pulverizing internal organs in a single bite. He dropped the corpse without a glance, golden eyes locking onto the throne dais. Vralek remained perched on his obsidian throne, mandibles clacking softly in amused disgust. His black enameled armor gleamed under the flickering ceremonial lights. Slowly he rose, towering over Darius and Fenra, skeletal limbs unfolding with predatory grace. "Impressive," he rasped, stepping down from the throne. "Truly Terrans possess savage elegance. But loyalty to an animal will not save you." Darius raised the plasma rifle and fired. The bolt struck Vralek's chest and dissipated harmlessly across a shimmering energy shield woven into his armor. The alien general chuckled, stepping forward as Darius dropped the empty rifle. "Your weapons are worthless," Vralek sneered, voice echoing across the silent hall. "Your death is inevitable." Darius gripped the plasma blade tighter, adjusting his stance despite the pain screaming through his legs. "Maybe," he rasped, lifting his chin. "But I'm not alone." Fenra snarled, hackles raised. His lips curled back to reveal every titanium-capped fang glistening under the emerald lights. He crouched low, muscles coiling under thick fur, claws digging into the steel floor. Vralek's mandibles twitched once, flickering annoyance marring his expression. "You think this beast can save you? He is nothing. An engineered pet playing at loyalty." Fenrir's growl deepened into a rolling thunder, vibrating through the silent chamber. He shifted his weight forward, tail flicking once behind him. His golden eyes locked onto Vralek's throat with unwavering intent. Darius exhaled once, centering himself beside his companion. Blood dripped from his torn fingertips, pattering onto the deck like a ticking clock. He rolled his shoulders back despite the agony, raising the plasma blade to chest level. "Let's end this, boy," he whispered. Vralek lunged first, his skeletal limbs moving with inhuman speed as his armored claws swept forward to crush Darius's skull. Fenra moved faster. He launched upward, jaws snapping around Vralek's forearm before it struck. His teeth bit down with explosive force, metal plating crumpling under crushing pressure. Vralek screeched, mandibles flailing as Fenra twisted his head violently, snapping the arm at the elbow. Darius surged forward, plasma blade humming as he drove it up under Vralek's chin. The energy filament pierced chitin, flesh, and bone in a single searing thrust. The alien general's scream cut short, head snapping back as molten green blood sprayed across Darius's face. Fenra released the shattered arm and lunged again, jaws closing around Vralek's throat. His teeth punched through armor and spine in one savage bite. He ripped backward, tearing the general's head free in a spray of gore and shattered carapace. The corpse crumpled to the floor in twitching heaps of segmented limbs and black armored fragments. For a long moment, silence reigned. Darius stood panting, plasma blade still humming in his trembling grip. Fenra dropped the severed head beside his master's feet, golden eyes locked onto Darius with fierce, unbreakable loyalty. Darius dropped to his knees, exhaustion overwhelming his adrenaline. His hand reached out, fingers burying into Fenra's thick neck fur. The dire wolf pressed closer, rumbling a deep, soft growl that resonated through his master's chest, anchoring him to the present. "Good boy," Darius whispered, voice shaking. "Good damn boy." Fenra licked the blood from his cheek once, then turned his head toward the execution hall's sealed exit. His ears flicked forward as he inhaled deeply, scenting the corridors beyond. His tail flicked again, signaling what his golden eyes burned with. Darius forced himself upright, wiping blood from his face with a trembling hand. He deactivated the plasma blade, clipping it to his belt, and picked up a discarded rifle. He checked the charge level with practiced efficiency. 40%. Enough to get them out. He nodded once to Fenrir. The dire wolf huffed, stepping forward to the sealed doors. His massive shoulders rolled as he pressed his snout against the seam, ears swiveling to track movements beyond. Darius lifted the rifle and placed his hand on Fenrir's back, feeling the steady, thunderous rhythm of his companion's heartbeat vibrating under battle-scarred fur. They stood together before the doors, a broken human and an apex predator forged in loyalty, preparing to carve a path to freedom through a warship filled with enemies. The future beyond those doors remained unwritten. But whatever it held, they would face it as they always had, side by side, unbroken and unbowed. The doors hissed open. The doors slid open with a hiss of hydraulics and a faint burst of cold, recycled air. Beyond lay a wide corridor lined with ribbed steel columns, illuminated by harsh strips of blue-white lights embedded in the ceiling. The scent of plasma residue, alien oils, and scorched metal rolled through the doorway, filling Darius's nose with the acrid perfume of war. Fenrir stepped forward first, massive paws padding across the grated floor in silent, predatory strides. His golden eyes flicked left and right, registering each shadow and flicker of movement with relentless focus. His ears pinned back as he sniffed the air, catching the faint vibrations of armored feet further down the hall. Darius followed close behind, plasma rifle raised, pulse vibrating in his fingertips as adrenaline burned through his exhausted veins. His legs trembled with strain, every step sending sparks of pain up his spine. But he kept moving, eyes fixed on Fenrir's rippling shoulders ahead of him. The corridor widened into an intersection, branching left toward the hangar bays and right toward the engineering cores. Fenrir paused at the junction, ears swiveling forward. He lowered his massive head, sniffing the cold air currents drifting down the left passageway. Beneath the scent of fuel, plasma scorches, and metallic antiseptics, he caught a whisper of vacuum-sealed alloys and ionized thrusters. Ships. Escape. His tail flicked once to the left. Darius understood instantly. He adjusted his grip on the rifle, moving forward to stand at Fenrir's flank. Together they advanced down the left corridor, stepping over scorched floor panels and discarded power cells. Distant alarms pulsed through the ship, echoing in broken rhythms that vibrated through the walls. They rounded a bend and emerged into the hangar bay. The cavernous chamber stretched out before them in towering tiers of docking arms, flickering maintenance lamps, and parked fighter craft glowing under rows of green status lights. Alien engineers scrambled across gantries, mandibles clacking in alarm as the human and dire wolf charged onto the metal platform. For a brief moment, silence froze the entire hangar. Engineers dropped their tools. Pilots paused in pre-flight checks. All eyes locked onto the blood-drenched human with a plasma rifle and the massive dire wolf at his side, golden eyes blazing with cold ferocity. Then the screaming started. An alarm klaxon blared overhead as security drones detached from ceiling rails, spinning up plasma turrets with mechanical shrieks. Darius raised his rifle and fired 3 rapid bursts. The first 2 struck a drone dead center, punching molten holes through its armored carapace. It spiraled out of the air, crashing into a fuel line that erupted in a small burst of flame and vapor. The third shot struck an engineer running for cover. The alien crumpled to the floor, chitin armor smoking where the plasma bolt punched through its chest. Fenrir charged forward, massive claws screeching against the steel floor as he launched himself onto a security drone diving toward Darius. His jaws snapped shut around the spinning turret, teeth biting through reinforced alloys with a sickening crunch. Sparks exploded from the broken drone as Fenrir twisted his neck violently, tearing it apart in a burst of shredded metal and wiring. Darius ran for the nearest fighter craft, a sleek dagger-shaped ship resting on its landing struts, cockpit hatch still open as its pilot scrambled to disengage the startup locks. He fired a burst into the alien's back, sending it sprawling across the hangar deck with a strangled scream. "Fenrir! Inside!" he shouted, his voice cracking from dehydration and strain. The dire wolf pivoted smoothly, leaping over fuel lines and alien corpses to land beside him. Together they climbed the small boarding ramp into the cockpit. Darius shoved the dead pilot out of the seat and strapped himself in, fingers flying across the alien controls. The interface flickered under his touch, alien glyphs rearranging themselves in diagnostic checklists and power readouts. He exhaled once, forcing his blurred vision to focus. Years of covert piloting missions surged back through muscle memory. Engines. Life support. Thrusters. Weapons offline. He didn't need them. He needed to leave. Fenra squeezed himself into the rear compartment, head low, ears pinned against the cockpit ceiling. His massive chest rose and fell in calm rhythm despite the chaos outside, golden eyes fixed unblinkingly on his master. A security team burst into the hangar, weapons raised. Plasma bolts hammered against the ship's shields, sending rippling waves of blue energy across the viewport. Darius flipped 2 toggles, disengaging the docking clamps. The ship lurched as its thrusters spun up in a high-pitched whine that rattled his teeth. Come on, he muttered, flicking the throttle forward. The fighter lifted off its struts, hovering above the deck as plasma fire slammed against its shields. Darius gritted his teeth, flicking his gaze to the targeting array. 10 hostiles. 11. 15. Too many. Didn't matter. He slammed the throttle to full. The ship roared forward, inertial dampeners flaring in delayed response as the fighter shot through the hangar force field and into the black void beyond. Stars exploded across the cockpit canopy in silent brilliance. The warship fell away behind them, a vast skeletal leviathan drifting against the backdrop of a pale dead moon. Darius exhaled shakily, gripping the controls with trembling fingers. His shoulders slumped as adrenaline drained from his bloodstream, leaving behind trembling exhaustion. He glanced back at Fenra. The dire wolf lay on his belly, massive head resting between his paws, golden eyes half-lidded in calm vigilance. His flanks rose and fell in quiet, measured breaths, ears twitching occasionally to track distant engine vibrations. Darius reached back with a shaking hand, fingers brushing against Fenra's blood-streaked fur. The dire wolf rumbled softly under his touch, a low vibration that resonated through the cockpit, grounding Darius in the present. The human closed his eyes, feeling the warmth beneath his fingers, the living proof of loyalty unbreakable by chains, plasma fire, or alien contempt. "Good boy," he whispered, voice breaking. "You did good, Fenra." Fenra huffed softly, pressing his massive head against Darius's forearm with a gentle nudge that belied his size and power. His golden eyes met Darius's with quiet, exhausted certainty. "A promise given without words, I will never leave you." Darius swallowed, blinking away the burn in his eyes. He turned back to the controls, scanning the navigation readouts. The alien glyphs flickered across the screen, displaying local orbital data and warp gate vectors. He selected the closest unguarded gate and locked in the jump coordinates. Outside, the void rippled with drifting debris and the faint glow of orbital salvage platforms. The fighter's engines vibrated under his seat as the jump drive charged, hum building into a bone-deep resonance that set his teeth on edge. Darius flexed his bruised fingers over the throttle, breathing out once in steady rhythm. "Let's go home, boy," he murmured. The jump drive activated. The stars stretched into blazing lines of light before vanishing altogether, leaving only darkness pierced by the occasional glimmer of distant suns. Inside the cockpit, the hum of the engines faded to quiet thrumming. Darius leaned back in the pilot's chair, body trembling with aftershocks of pain and relief. His hand remained buried in Fenra's fur, fingers gripping the thick ruff at his neck. Fenra closed his eyes, tail thumping once against the compartment floor. His breathing deepened into the slow, rhythmic cadence of an apex predator at rest, confident that no threat remained within striking distance. For the first time in hours, Darius allowed himself to exhale fully, shoulders sinking as the tension drained from his battered frame. He glanced down at his dire wolf, studying the scarred muzzle, the titanium-capped fangs hidden behind peaceful lips, the faint burn marks seared into the dark silver fur. Pride surged in his chest, bright and fierce. Not pride in ownership or command, but pride in knowing he had stood beside a creature of unbreakable loyalty and intelligence. Pride in knowing he had been chosen as worthy of that bond. Outside the viewport, distant nebulas glowed in violet and blue, their radiant clouds swirling around hidden stars. Somewhere beyond them lay Earth, cold and blue and waiting. Somewhere beyond them lay the forests where Fenra once hunted snow hares as a pup, where Darius once trained beneath black pines under winter moons. They would return. Together. Darius closed his eyes, listening to the steady rumble of Fenra's breathing behind him, and allowed a faint, tired smile to touch his split lips. He felt the warmth of those golden eyes upon him even in darkness, promising silent protection until sleep came. And for the first time in a long, long while he felt safe.